I think crypto has been trying to reinvent how finance works for the last 10 years. And essentially, every attempt has been interesting, exciting, but had a major pullback. You could think of a platform like Binance, incredibly innovative, incredibly successful, huge numbers of users, new things like perps, attracting rig attention, but it's a centralized offshore exchange with significant regulatory risk.
Since Bitcoin changed finance forever, no crypto investment product has generated this much excitement. That's according to Matt Hougan of Bitwise, who says Hyper Liquid's ETF launch exceeded all expectations, attracting nearly $60 million in just 10 days. But why are some of crypto's smartest investors calling Hyper Liquid the next major story after Bitcoin? And could it become one of the biggest financial platforms in the world? Let's find out.
Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
Yeah, it's exceeded my expectations. I knew it would be successful, but it's done even better than I thought. I think this is probably the best single asset crypto ETP launch since Bitcoin when you adjust for the size of Hyperliquid and the scale of excitement. 10 straight days of inflows, nearly $60 million flowing in. I think that's going to accelerate from here. I think crypto was hungry for a new story. Hyperliquid is that new story, and the ETF hit at the right time. So yeah, it's been a huge win. It's sort of like a nuclear switch sort of thing, Nate. You need two things to be true for Bitwise to launch an ETF. So we need to think that there's demand in the market, right? The signal here was that Hyperliquid was performing well, Hype was performing well, and it had a very strong community that had strong opinions about that. We like to see that. So you need to think it's viable in the market, but then you need to underwrite it from an investment perspective. That's what you were saying about Bitwise being selective. We won't launch on any crypto asset, only assets we believe in. In the case of Hyperliquid, here's what we saw. I think crypto has been trying to reinvent how finance works for the last 10 years. And essentially, every attempt has been interesting, exciting, but had a major pullback. You could think of a platform like Binance, incredibly innovative, incredibly successful, huge numbers of users, new things like perps, attracting rig attention, but it's a centralized offshore exchange with significant regulatory risk. You think about something like Uniswap, an incredible decentralized trading protocol, enormous volume, sometimes more trading volume than Coinbase. It's amazing. But the token was launched on the Gensler era, right? When you couldn't have a token that accrued value, which makes it a challenging investment. I love Uniswap, but the token has some token economic challenges. Or you think of things like DYDX or some of the other sort of perp future protocols that have been out there, but have had challenging UX or not enough throughput. Hyperliquid, because of when it launched and because of where it came in the journey, put all of those things together. It's a perpetual futures exchange first and foremost, but expanding into other areas. It is incredible UX because crypto now is in this broadband era where you can do 100,000 plus transactions per second and make it very easy to use. The token accrues value directly from the fees generated on the platform, right? Every 99% of all trading fees goes to buy back Hyperliquid. I think that's possible because we're out of the Gensler era and into the Atkins era. So it was sort of finally we had a solution to this problem of reinventing finance. We thought that was going to scale. I still think it's going to scale. And so it checked those boxes and we thought it would be a great asset to launch. So perpetual futures are an idea that dates back all the way to Robert Shiller. Us in the ETF industry might remember the macro shares, which were sort of a version of an attempt at this. But the idea is, unlike traditional futures contracts, which expire at a certain date, perpetual contracts are, as the name suggests, perpetual. So you can gain exposure to something through a futures contract and it will never expire. And there's a mechanism that allows that to do it by charging a fee to maintain the position. But you can think of it as an exciting innovation on the futures market, which is a giant, right, multi-trillion-dollar market, which has this big flaw, which is periodically the contracts end and you have to roll them over. That's a pain. Perpetuals solve that problem. So to one extent, the first place Hyperliquid made its name is by offering perpetual futures, first on crypto, but then also on traditional assets. You can trade the S&P 500, you can trade oil, you can trade other commodities. And there's some interesting things that come along with this capability. You can trade them 24/7, 365. They never shut down. So Hyperliquid, for instance, took a big step up at the start of the Iran war when all other exchanges globally were closed, because that started on a Saturday, but Hyperliquid was open. And so it became the default way to trade oil. So it's this new type of futures exchange, but it has broader ambitions than that. It really wants to be a super app where you can do all sorts of financial activity. So they're launching prediction markets on there. I wouldn't be surprised to see them move into spot. You can think of it really as a competitor to CME, Robinhood, etc., with a crypto underlying that makes it very easy to use. And that's sort of what it is. And it's growing enormously quickly on a global basis.
Despite its rapid expansion, Hyperliquid remains a tiny player relative to global derivatives markets. Worldwide derivatives trading represents one of the largest financial sectors on Earth, measured in trillions of dollars. Even capturing 1% of global market share would represent enormous growth. If Hyperliquid eventually achieves that level of adoption, transaction volumes could increase many times over current levels. This possibility explains why investors are paying close attention. The investment thesis is not based on current size. It's based on future potential. Supporters believe Hyperliquid is building infrastructure capable of serving millions of users worldwide. If that vision becomes reality, today's valuations could look very different in hindsight.
It really matters for two reasons. The first is that it controls its own destiny. So if you run on Ethereum or you run on Solana, you're dependent on how that network is functioning and whether it's functioning well. To make an analogy, imagine that you had to get from Atlanta to Washington, D.C., and you could go on I-95, or you could go on your own highway that you built, and you control all of the traffic. You're probably going to have a more consistent path on your own highway because you can set the fees, you can set the number of cars on it, you can set the rules, you can set the policing, as opposed to being on public infrastructure. So the first reason it's important that Hyperliquid has its own layer 1 blockchain is it controls the rails. It doesn't matter if fees spike on Ethereum or if it jams up or if Solana goes down, it controls its own rails. And then the second piece is more technical, which has to do with what in crypto is called MEV, which is extracting value from the ordering of trades in specific blocks. When you don't have your own layer 1 network, you're more subject to people extracting those fees, which makes it more costly for users to trade and transact. They don't get the same quality of execution. When you hold your own blockchain, you can redirect that sort of MEV fee back into the value of the entity. So it's both more deterministic, that it goes at exactly the pace you want, and then it's actually a better user experience because you don't have this value seepage that you get when you use these other blockchains. It's not the only way to run these things. I'm not saying that anything that runs on ETH or Solana is bad, but it does have these unique advantages if you can get a high quality layer 1 blockchain up and running. It's really remarkable. So the way that it works is when you trade on the Hyperliquid platform, you generate fees like you would on any derivatives exchange. And 99% of those fees go back to buying back this token, which creates strong upward pressure on the price of the token because you have a persistent bid, right? It's running at extraordinarily high revenues, extraordinarily high buybacks, $1 billion plus a year, which is driving the price up. An interesting fact, if you look at it, recently set an all-time high on price for the HYPE token, but it did not set an all-time high on market cap for the HYPE token, which is sort of a mind-bending idea. And the reason for that is that it bought back so much that the circulating supply had come down. So even though the price was higher, the actual market cap was lower. The real, a lot of people ask, why does HYPE have a token even to begin with? There are a number of answers to that. But one of the first and most important was it was a way to jumpstart the growth of the Hyperliquid exchange, right? It was sort of a solution to the cold start problem where the value of any network grows with the number of people participating in that network and the liquidity on something like an exchange. But how do you get the initial liquidity? And the Hyperliquid token incentivized that early growth. And then because of this buyback feature, people are incented to stay on board because there's this perpetual buying motion of this token. People make an analogy to a stock buyback. I think there's, like many analogies, value in that. It's sort of similar to that. It's obviously not exactly the same, but you do get this buy pressure from all the fee generation on the platform that has driven the price up. And if you think Hyperliquid is going to be a globally important financial platform, it has a long way to go, right? It is a tiny fraction of total derivatives volume globally. If it even got to 1% or 5% of global derivatives volume, you're talking about a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50x in terms of transaction volume. So there's a lot of growth potential if it in fact succeeds at the scale many people think it will. And let me make one more point on that buyback mechanism, because I think it's important. We've sort of been trained in crypto to think that tokens don't accrue value, because most tokens don't have this flywheel where fees generated on the platform go directly to buying back the token. If you think about something like Uniswap, a very small fraction of fees and only on specific areas go towards this sort of mechanism. Hyperliquid is the far end of that, right? 99% of fees go directly towards buying this back. So the flywheel spins really fast. I think it's going to take investors a while to realize that this is a Gen 2 token. Like, it's a new version. It's not like the past. And as people sort of underwrite that and realize that, I think it will drive real interest. Yeah, you mentioned staking. Obviously, with a layer 1 blockchain, you need the blockchain to run and function. And most modern blockchains are proof of stake blockchains. Bitcoin is the outlier with the old school proof of work approach. Hyperliquid is a modern blockchain with a proof of stake mechanism. Bitwise is one of the larger staking providers in the Hyperliquid ecosystem. We stake about 70% of the assets in this ETF. And then we also stake additional assets in our core staking business. But yeah, it's as you described, it's participating in the ecosystem. You earn Hyper rewards from it. There are certain advantages for stakers from a trading perspective. But really, it's just similar in many ways to ETH, Solana, and other staking ecosystems, in that you earn rewards for making the network run. Obviously, a very competitive fee. The less you spend, the more you keep. Strong staking with a vast majority of the assets from one of the largest staking service providers in the Hyperliquid ecosystem. Staking in-house allows us to offer a better deal to the ETF than we would if we worked with a third party, and we're fortunate to have that business to tap into. And then, of course, with Bitwise, maybe the unique thing that you get is the support of the Bitwise ecosystem. Anyone can ask us any question about crypto at any time, and we'll respond within 24 hours from my research team. So if you're a participant in BHYPE and have a question about Hyperliquid, you can send in a question and my team will answer you in 24 hours. That's sort of the bonus thing that Bitwise does uniquely, and we're pretty proud of it. But yeah, think of it as a plain vanilla crypto ETP with staking added on, like a 2.25% yield currently, that gives exposure to one of the most exciting projects in crypto. I think it's a pretty good offering.
Because Hyperliquid operates its own proof-of-stake blockchain, token holders can also participate in network security through staking. Bitwise itself has become one of the largest staking providers within the Hyperliquid ecosystem. Through staking, participants earn rewards while helping maintain network operations. This creates an additional yield component beyond potential token appreciation. According to Hougan, Bitwise currently stakes a significant portion of the assets held within its Hyperliquid investment products. For investors, this means exposure to both platform growth and staking rewards. The combination of token buybacks, ecosystem expansion, and staking yield creates a multi-layered investment case that differs from many traditional crypto assets.
Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks, and enjoy the video.